I'm joined now by Dr. Ashok Kumar, a lecturer on international political economy at Birkbeck University here in London. Thanks for joining us. The farmers are worried about basically being undercut by the private sector, but the government is saying that they will guarantee their minimum price. Why is that not enough for them?
Well, the reforms are pretty clear that that they basically deregulate the agriculture sector. They eliminate the minimum pricing that we know, despite the assurances of the government, and they open up agriculture to large capital private interests. So,
but the government do say that they are giving a sort of minimal base pay going forward, don't they?
No, the reform. Modi made a speech, and I'd encourage Prime Minister Modi to actually read the bill that talks about technological investment. The government hasn't said that they've still maintained in the bills that they passed in September that they'll abolish the minimal prices and harmonize industrial agriculture or Indian agriculture to be in line with, say, Western farmers. So, I mean, if you look at what's happened, I mean, as an illustrative example, imagine you're selling a tomato at 10 paise. Now it's basically up to the vicissitudes of the market. It could be 5 paise, it could be 7 paise, which means that there's increased pressure on farmers and increased pressure on farmland, which then contributes to potentially optimizing the environment for India's burgeoning agribusiness conglomerate. So there is the continued position of the government has been to maintain, they're still in negotiations, but maintain these 3 bills. The bills primarily basically try and open up the markets in terms of agriculture.
OK, well, I'm sure I've seen the Indian government saying they are going to maintain a minimum price to support these farmers, but it is the very small farmers that are perhaps most vulnerable here. And these protests are quite extraordinary, aren't they? That we haven't seen this level of protests for some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's day 16. The protests are historical. We saw 250 million workers go on strike, more than half the workers in India, the largest in human history. Protests have been happening across the country. And you had 300,000 people who were still in the outskirts of Delhi, primarily from Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, blockading motorways and camping out. And the protests have spread from the northwest to the northeast and to the south. And this should be, this is a worrying sign for the government. But there has been negotiations between farmers' organizations and the government, but the farmers' organizations have been united in saying that their demands, that they won't settle for anything but short of a complete repeal of the laws. And so it's quite unprecedented and it's very historic.
The government, of course, is arguing also that these reforms will eliminate the middlemen. And of course, some big business also saying you need more technology to make agriculture in India more efficient. It's about half the economy, isn't it, in terms of workforce? It's a huge part of India's potential growth ahead.
Well, 70% of Indian society relies directly or indirectly on agriculture for their livelihood. There's nothing in these bills about technological investment. The middleman they're talking about is the price demands, that the price settlement established by the government in the 1960s. As the example I gave you, if you have the price fluctuating, that means that basically the land in which those products are produced become open to exploitation by these large conglomerates, and that was the entire purpose of the bill themselves. And it's quite disingenuous, I think, now that Modi's come out and said that we'll be more accommodating, because up until this point, the various sort of functionaries in the apparatchiks of the government have branded the protesters as terrorists and anti-nationals, or in the other end, trying to present them as these kind of country bumpkins.
Just very quickly, Dr. Kumar, just very quickly, we've got about 20 seconds. There have been accusations that, Khalistanis, Indian separatists and so on have infiltrated these protests, and that is perhaps helpful to Modi.
Accusations by whom? Every single opposition group, whether it's students or Kashmiris or environmental activists, have been brandished as anti-nationals and terrorists since this government came into power. So I don't think there's any legitimacy to those claims.
Dr. Kumar, many thanks indeed for your time today. You're watching BBC News.